Virgo, the future plan revealed. Someone will invite you to share the same home. There's a question no one asks aloud before handing someone a second key. What will that person find when they open the door unannounced? You've always known exactly how to control what others see in you, the right time to show tiredness, the organized version of the mess that exists behind every impeccable routine. But an invitation to share the same roof doesn't ask for that edited version. It asks for the other one, the one that's switched on when no one is watching. What if the future plan that's about to unfold for you isn't about finding the perfect person to share an address with, but about finding someone willing to live within the process you've never let anyone see up close? In this video, I'm going to show you why Virgo handles the invitation to share a home completely differently from any other sign, and why the scariest part of this story isn't the change of address. It's what it reveals about how much you've learned to protect yourself and what can happen when someone finally asks to move in permanently. There's a phrase no one has told you yet, but it's already written somewhere in your routine. It's not about love, it's about a key, about a second key, specially cut for you, handed to you with both hands, without ceremony, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But for Virgo, nothing involving space is natural. Everything is calculated, felt, tested before being accepted. You think you're going to be invited to share a house, but what they're really asking for is to share the place where you organize the chaos that nobody sees. Because there's a difference between loving someone and letting that person see how you fold the towels, what time of night you gather your thoughts, what you do when the silence in the house becomes too great. Virgo builds alone a system of drawers, of schedules, of small certainties that sustain an entire day. And this system isn't coldness. It's the only place where Virgo finally rests. Now imagine this system being observed by another pair of eyes every day, with no escape. There's a carpenter inside every Virgo, someone who learned early on that two pieces of wood only truly fit together when each has been sanded, measured, and adjusted to the perfect millimeter. A poorly made joint cracks over time. A well-made joint sustains weight, generation after generation. Virgo never builds on impulse, they build through silent engineering. And that's precisely why the invitation to share a home carries a weight that no outsider can measure. It's not a house being offered. It's permission to enter the workshop where Virgo alone has spent their entire life adjusting their own pieces. There's a question lingering beneath this invitation. Even if no one says it aloud, what remains of me when someone lives inside my process? There is also the restorer, the one who enters an old house full of layers of paint one on top of the other, and instead of renovating everything at once, scrapes slowly, respecting what was already there. Virgin treats her own space this way. Each object has a story that no one asked about. Each corner holds a previous version of who you were. And when someone asks to live there, they're not just asking for an address. They're asking to walk between the layers, to see the exposed plaster, to witness the parts you haven't yet finished restoring in yourself. And this is where fear usually appears, disguised as logistics. You start thinking about practical details, about how it will be to share the room, the bathroom, the mornings. But beneath these small questions lies a huge, almost forbidden question. Will this person continue to choose to stay after seeing what I'm really like when no one is watching? There's a scene that silently repeats itself in the life of almost every Virgo before that invitation arrives. It's the moment when you organize the house by yourself, put everything in its right place, and feel for a second a peace you can't name. A peace that doesn't depend on anyone. And it's precisely this peace that is threatened when someone asks to come in for good. There is also the greenhouse guardian, The one who cultivates plants in a controlled environment where temperature, light, and humidity are measured with almost obsessive care because something grows inside that wouldn't survive outside without that care. Virgo cultivates at home a version of herself that only exists in that closed, protected environment, perfectly adjusted. And the invitation to share the home is, in essence, an invitation to open the greenhouse door and let the wind into something you've never allowed before, to enter something you've never let anyone touch. And that question, what's left of me when another person lives inside my process, doesn't have an easy answer. It's unsettling because it touches the exact point where you confuse control with identity. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose isn't about organizing closets or dividing household chores. It talks about something every Virgo feels intensely but rarely names. The difference between controlling the space around you and trusting that the space can remain standing even when you loosen the reins a little. The material addresses exactly this attitude, finding real clarity without getting lost in the pursuit of the perfection you've built yourself as a form of protection. It's not about giving up who you are. It's about understanding that your demands, when well-directed, can become the foundation of something shared instead of the wall that separates. If you've made it this far with a bit of a heavy heart, recognizing this habit of measuring everything before delivering anything, now is the time to act. Not in a week, when the anxiety has already been swept under the rug. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And tell me in the comments below, when was the last time you let someone rearrange something in your space without feeling the urge to correct it afterward? Once the question hangs in the air, something in Virgo begins to move, even against its will. It's not a decision made all at once, with a date and signature. It's more like a slow rearrangement of furniture inside your head, one push at a time, whenever you realize that the old system can no longer handle what's being asked of you now. And that's where the upholsterer comes in. That craftsman who takes an old, worn-out piece of furniture, full of poorly made patches from other people, and instead of discarding the whole piece, removes layer by layer, finds the still, firm wooden structure underneath, and starts the upholstery from scratch with a new fabric on top of what already existed. Virgo does this with its own intimacy. Beneath the rigidity, the demands, the criticism that comes before the affection, there is a firm wooden structure ready to receive a new fabric. The problem is that nobody ever asked if they could change the upholstery. People just complained about the worn-out upholstery and left. This explains a pattern that repeats itself in almost every previous Virgo relationship. People who were charmed by the surface, the organization, the quiet loyalty, the attention to detail, and who, faced with the first poorly done patch exposed, chose to walk out the door instead of asking if they could help sew it back together. Each of these exits reinforced a dangerous belief that the upholstery can only be shown after it's perfect, never during the repair process. And it is precisely this belief that the next invitation threatens to shatter. A truly divided home isn't about two names on the same doorbell. It's about letting someone put their hands under the upholstery and feel the wood beneath, and staying there without running away. Think about the first week of living together, not the pretty part, with the unopened boxes and the new expectations. The real part, the moment the other person walks into the room and finds you redoing, for the third time, a task they've already done. Not because it was wrong, because it wasn't the way only you can explain it. It's in that small, almost invisible instant that the upholstery begins to show its old patches. And the question that lingers isn't whether you'll be forgiven for it. It's whether you'll be able to forgive yourself before continuing. There is a huge difference between demanding perfection from the space and demanding perfection from oneself within the space. Virgo rarely separates the two, and it is precisely at this point, when the old lining has already been removed and the structure is exposed, that most people freeze up. The second layer has to do with real keys, not just metal ones. There's a key ring inside every Virgo, someone who knows with almost uncanny precision how many turns each lock in their own life needs to open without jamming. Over the years, you've memorized exactly how much of yourself to show to each person in each situation. One turn for work, half a turn for your closest friends, and the master key, the one that unlocks everything, almost never leaves your pocket. This system of deflection was born out of a practical way to survive. At some point, showing too much came at a high price, a betrayed trust, a vulnerability used against you, or simply the silence of someone who didn't know what to do with so much truth at once. Virgo learned in practice that moderating access is safer than blindly trusting, and it worked for years. The problem is that this same system, so efficient at protecting, is also excellent at keeping anyone at a safe distance, including someone who never gave a real reason for such caution. The invitation to share your home is, without disguise, a request for the master key, not the one that opens the physical door, that one you hand over without a second thought. The other one, the one that opens the room where you keep the version of yourself that you're not yet sure deserves to see every day, unedited, without the shop window version you show to the rest of the world. There's a scene that almost every Virgo has experienced, but never properly told anyone. The one where someone innocently asks, "What are you thinking about right now?" And the truth is so raw, so full of calculation and insecurity, disguised as organization, that it seems easier to invent something else. A nothing much, a just thinking about tomorrow's list. The master key is kept hidden once again, and no one on the other side realizes that that little lie has just protected an entire territory. Except that living together reduces the space for that kind of escape. Doors get closer. Silences become harder to disguise as tiredness, and sooner or later, someone will notice that there's a room in there that's never been shown, and will ask without malice, just with genuine curiosity, if they can go in. There's a difference between hiding out of shame and hiding out of habit, and Virgo rarely stops to distinguish between the two. Shame fears rejection. Habit only fears losing control over the narrative. And it's curious to realize that most of the closed doors within Virgo don't hold anything so terrible. They only hold the raw, unedited version of someone who never learned that they could be seen without prior preparation and still be chosen. It was precisely this doubt, how much of the master key do I truly give away and to whom, that led me back to the digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. It treats inner clarity as a tool, not as luck, for those who are tired of memorizing how many turns to take in each lock of their own life before letting someone truly in. It's not about giving everything away at once, without criteria. It's about recognizing, with discernment, when keeping the master key has become a defensive habit and no longer a real need. And this completely changes how you allow yourself to be known. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There is also a third layer, perhaps the most silent of all. Imagine a bookbinder bent over a table, joining loose pages, each written by a different hand, each with its own paper texture, and transforming it all with glue, thread, and patience into a single volume that stands on its own on the shelf. No page loses its identity in the process, but all become part of the same spine. Sharing a home is like that. It's not about erasing your history to fit into someone else's. It's about allowing two narratives to be woven together under the same cover, without either needing to pretend the other didn't exist before. There's a detail in bookbinding that few notice from the outside. Before gluing any page, the bookbinder needs to trim the edges, straighten anything crooked, and discard excess paper that serves no purpose other than hindering the binding. Virgo understands this process better than any other sign because they've done it to themselves their whole lives. Trimming habits, cutting excesses, adjusting behaviors until they fit into a presentable version. What no one ever says is that to truly connect with another person, this constant trimming also needs, at some point, to give way to rest. Not every crooked edge needs to be trimmed before someone is let in. For Virgo, who edits her own version before showing it to others, this is both frightening and beautiful at the same time. To stop editing and let the binding show, with the stitching visible and all. There's a specific moment when this usually happens for the first time, not in a grand gesture, but in a small, almost silly scene. Someone seeing you cry for a reason you yourself find ridiculous, or hearing you quietly repeat a worry you already know is exaggerated, and instead of laughing or downplaying it, that person simply stands there without trying to fix anything. At that moment, the bump closes, a little crooked, but firm. And firm, for someone who has spent their life supporting themselves, is more than enough. This ability to go beyond the self-criticism you've built as your identity is precisely what the digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, helps you develop, not as generic motivational speeches, but as a daily practice of real discernment, chapter after chapter. It starts from the principle that your demanding nature was never the problem. The problem is when it becomes the only language you know to demonstrate care. Changing languages without losing the essence is what separates those who isolate themselves from those who finally allow themselves to be connected with someone. Finally, there is an image that explains better than any advice what is about to happen in your life. Imagine a winemaker standing in a dark cellar, tasting a still young, still rough wine that needs time in the barrel to soften without losing its original strength. He doesn't rush the process, nor does he abandon the bottle out of impatience. He waits, tastes again, adjusts the temperature, trusting in what only time can reveal. A truly divided home ages like this. It's not ready on moving day, nor during the first argument about where to store things, nor the first time someone discovers a strange habit of the other in the middle of the night. It matures slowly, barrel by barrel, year after year, until two different tastes become a single vintage that no one can separate anymore. There's a scene that, if you pay attention, will probably still happen. A random night, without a set date, without any celebration, when you look around the shared house and realize that the system of drawers you so carefully protected hasn't disappeared. It just gained a second hand taking care of it too. The times you defended as sacred territory now have another person respecting the silence at the right hours without you needing to ask. And it's in that instant, usually too small to be photographed, that Virgo understands something that no one else could have explained before. Sharing a home was never about losing control. It was about discovering that there was someone willing to learn the language of your demands, instead of demanding that you forget that language. All the invisible architecture you built yourself, the carpenter adjusting joints, the restorer respecting ancient layers, the caretaker tending to the greenhouse, the upholsterer replacing the lining without discarding the structure, the locksmith deciding how many turns to make, the bookbinder joining pages without erasing any, wasn't wasted work, waiting for someone to destroy it. It was preparation. It was you, unknowingly, getting everything ready for the day someone knocked on the door, asking with the utmost naturalness to live inside what you protected most in your life. When that person arrives, or if they've already arrived and the key is already with them, perhaps the only thing left to do is stop calculating the risk for a second and simply open that door again. Not because the fear has disappeared, but because, for the first time, the silence of the divided house has ceased to be a refuge and has become company. There is one last image worth remembering, simpler than all the previous ones, that of a house at night with the lights already off, and two different breaths finding the same rhythm after a whole day of small adjustments. No one agreed on that rhythm aloud. It formed slowly, the way only true things form, without haste, without a script, without anyone needing to pretend to be easier to love than they really are. And it is in this, exactly in this, that the future plan lies that no one told you about before you experienced it firsthand. A home that remains entirely yours, and which, by some kind of discreet miracle, has also become someone else's place. Not because you gave up who you always were, but because finally you found someone willing to learn patiently all the small, silent languages that you spent a lifetime building on your own.